Netflix has been spending big on movies over the last couple of years, and I mean really big. They pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into movies in 2024 and 2025, hoping to catch our attention. But was it all worth it? Welcome back, everyone. Matthew from CineGold. Some budgets on this list took some educated guessing, but I think I got it sorted out pretty well. Here's the top 10 most expensive Netflix movies of 2024 and 2025, starting with number 10.
I have no choice but to fight.
First up with an $83 million budget is Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. Rebel Moon Part 1 and 2 were filmed together with $166 million. Divide that in half to get the budget for each film at $83 million. That's actually lower than I would have expected from this film, seeing as how much it was talked about and promoted before its release. Rebel Moon was, of course, a Zack Snyder film, and it was supposed to be Netflix's answer to Star Wars and Dune. It was not well loved by critics or audiences, but it did garner a pretty high viewership between the two films. There are allegedly still plans for more films in the franchise, but that seems to be up in the air at the moment. While Rebel Moon clearly didn't pan out the way Netflix wanted it to, it was still probably a success for them in terms of at least making their money back. At number 9, with a rumored $80 to $100 million budget, is The Old Guard 2. Now, not every movie's official budget is public information, but we can come up with a reasonably close guesstimation by examining similar movies, other movies in franchises, and actors' typical pay and whatnot. The Old Guard 2 was very likely in the $80 to $100 million range, which was a little higher than the first film. It's a relatively modest number as far as modern movies go, and most of that budget probably went into the large-scale stunt work, ensemble cast including Charlize Theron, and the cost of international crews in both Italy and the UK. But we still got much bigger budgets to come, so let's go ahead and check out the next movie. At number 8, with a likely $80 to $120 million budget, is Spellbound. This is surprisingly the only animated movie on this list. High-end CG animated movies can get pretty expensive, usually hiring A-list actors for voices and usually containing fully orchestrated original music. Spellbound was a Skydance animation and featured Rachel Zegler, Nicole Kidman, and Javier Bardem as the voices. It was called generic by critics and barely cracked Netflix's top 10 after release, but it did help Netflix build up its family animation slate, meaning it was probably at least somewhat worth its high cost. One movie that hasn't released yet but is still coming in 2025 is Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein.
In seeking life, I created death.
Industry chatter has Frankenstein pinned at about $100 million budget, which is relatively easy to pinpoint due to the director having so many films already. Del Toro always has richly detailed and effects-heavy films like The Shape of Water and Pan's Labyrinth. The cast is pretty stacked, including actors like Oscar Isaac, Mia Goth, and Christoph Waltz. Will Frankenstein pan out and end up being worth the cost? I think so, seeing as how it's one of the biggest films still remaining on Netflix's 2025 slate, which hasn't been all that great up to this point, honestly. Del Toro's films are always pretty good and noteworthy, and I imagine Frankenstein will be a decent end-of-the-year hit. All the remaining films on this list have confirmed budgets. At number 6 is Atlas with a $100 million budget. This 2024 sci-fi action film starring Jennifer Lopez kind of came and went, didn't it? The big price tag was due to large-scale CG across the entire film and paying Miss Lopez's fee. Was it worth it? Critics were not kind to Atlas, to say the least, with pretty awful reviews and Rotten Tomato scores, but it did draw in a massive viewership in the first month of release, hitting the top 10 in 93 countries and number 1 globally. This likely justified the budget, and while I'm sure Netflix would have enjoyed some higher review scores, it was still a big, splashy sci-fi release for the platform that probably easily made its money back. Here's one more $100 million movie before we make a big leap upwards. It's 2024's Lift. This heist movie starred Kevin Hart and features some globe-spanning settings, an ensemble cast, and some major visual effects, especially the mid-air high sequences. Lift had, and stop me if you've heard this before, not great reviews, but again it hit the top 10 in 93 countries and amassed 129 million views in 6 months, making it one of Netflix's highest viewed originals in 2024. So even though Lift didn't land creatively, the $100 million likely paid off for Netflix. Next up, with a $145 million budget, is the dark fantasy film Damsel.
Your hand, child.
Close your eyes.
I've got you.
Apparently, Damsel was supposed to be a more modest $70 million, but the budget escalated well beyond initial projections. There's a lot of things that add to the cost in this movie. Star Millie Bobby Brown apparently got a $10 million check for her role, the extensive visual effects and CG, there were large-scale fantasy sets and locations, and adding to the initial projections were the multiple delays and reshoots. Again, Damsel wasn't the highest reviewed movie, but ended up one of the most watched Netflix movies of that year, with 143 million views in the first few months. That alone probably made it worth the cost for Netflix. The third most expensive movie to release on Netflix in 2024 and 2025 was Beverly Hills Cop Axel F with a $150 million budget. This movie revived the iconic action comedy franchise and frankly demanded a high-scale production. It had a pretty big and I'm sure well-paid cast in Eddie Murphy, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Kevin Bacon. A lot of its costs can also be attributed to it being a high-octane action sequel with big vehicle stunts and chase sequences. Beverly Hills Cop Axel F received pretty mixed reviews from fans, but I for one felt it was pretty fun and enjoyable. It ended up being the #1 movie on Netflix for a solid 2 weeks, meaning it likely achieved its core goals for Netflix. And getting into what I would consider big territory in terms of budget is Back in Action with $207 million. I should point out that they were able to get a UK tax credit for this film, dropping the total cost down to about $160 million, but it's still one of Netflix's most expensive films ever. Back in Action was able to pull Cameron Diaz out of retirement, who co-starred alongside Jamie Foxx. This is another big action movie with elaborate set builds, numerous filming locations, and large-scale stunt choreography. It also had numerous delays and reshoots, adding to the total cost, and surprise, surprise, critics mostly hated it, but streaming numbers soared with 165 million views in the first few months. That kind of massive audience reach is probably gonna be a success for any streaming service, regardless of the budget. And the #1 movie on this list and the biggest budget Netflix movie of all time is The Electric State with a $320 million budget.
Get ready.
I am going to save my brother.
The Electric State ranks number 13 in the most expensive films ever made, just below Avengers Infinity War. Why so expensive? It's got an A-list ensemble cast, including Millie Bobby Brown and Chris Pratt. There were massive VFX and CGI requirements with over 100 sets built. There were animatronic robots, years of post-production, but was it all worth it? I think from the viewer's point of view, probably not. It was a pretty mediocre movie, and there are plenty of other better sci-fi out there that cost a lot less. The first Dune movie cost half this, and though it did receive solid viewing numbers, The Electric State has pretty much set off a debate about whether these mega budget experiments are even worth it for streaming services anymore. That is our list for today. What do you think? Were any of these big budget movies worth it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and thanks again for watching, everyone. I will see you again soon.